Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. This video shouldn't be too long just because it is after midnight. In spite of that fact, I am still having a caffeinated beverage because I want it. And I have daytime fatigue anyway and slept part of the day, so I might as well get my caffeine now. Makes no sense. I'm sticking with it. So this is my Keep Calm and Use Your Little Gray Sails, mon ami mug, and I have a Russian caravan tea in here, which is slightly amusing if you are familiar. I don't know, having the combination of the Russian caravan tea, which makes me think of the Countess who Poirot likes so much, plus a Poirot mug makes me happy. Quite hot, but still good. Alrighty. I wanted to record this because I haven't done a fiction booktube in a while. There won't be a whole lot here because I simply haven't been reading terribly much fiction lately. I did, however, read a little bit simply because I've been going on such a tear of history books that when I finished the book on Tutankhamun, I really needed a brain break. So I ended up choosing to read a book that I received for my birthday, by surprise, actually, from my dad. I had this on my wish list for a while, hadn't been able to justify. Actually, I don't think I even had it on my wish list. I just sort of had it in the back of my head that I wanted this. But I hadn't been able to justify picking it up. My dad surprised me with this. I first heard about this from, sorry, my brain's just not there. Too fond of books, who is Janelle. And this is your guide for not getting murdered in a quaint English village. This was just the fun, quick little read that I needed. It's not a true story type read. It's just like a bunch of humorous little references to different things you might see in these quaint English village murders. Actually, I felt like quite a few of the tropes showed up in the Choose Your Own Adventure that's called Could You Survive Midsummer or Will You Survive Midsummer? Something like that. I read it sometime last year. And actually, Janelle talked about that one fairly recently, too. I felt like a few of those tropes were hit in that Choose Your Own Adventure. So that book kept coming to mind while I was reading this one. But yeah, it's just a humorous book. The artwork can be a little, it's very cartoony, but it's also gruesome at times. Nothing like terribly, terribly gruesome, but yeah, it sometimes like, oh my. This is just the little bit of a brain break I needed after having done so much serious reading. And I have started a couple more history books because I don't know how to do just one book at a time. That's just impossible for me. A friend of mine who actually watches this, so hi Brittany, she got me, I think it was a sticker. I think it was a couple stickers for my journaling. And one of it had something about, it had like octopus readers, so the octopus had like all these books. Yeah, that's me. I just can't do one book at once. Or even 2 or 3. That's just impossible. So yes, really enjoyed this, recommend this. Like I said, don't expect a reading book. It's more of a aha kind of book. I also managed to justify, or that was a gift, but actually let me show the other gift. I have a couple Kindle books, but I'll show those gifts when they come up that I read it. But my dad found this, and he thought it was great as like a little stick in your purse thing, because I have a lot of doctor's appointments I go to. An Elderly Lady Must Not Be Crossed by Helene Thurston. I haven't read this yet. Apparently it's a book translated from Swedish, which is really cool. So I haven't read it. It's got nice size print. It looks like it's just going to be short. It looks like it's short stories. Maybe it's a little bit longer than short stories. Maybe it's little novellas. I can't quite tell because I haven't done more than quickly glance at it. But this will be fun next time I have to go to a doctor's appointment. I'm trying to bring physical books versus my Kindle because I don't feel like losing a Kindle. Books tend to be easier to replace unless you're bringing one of my books that I pick up that are like ones you can't replace, like my Queen Victoria's Mr. Brown book, which is I discovered it was a 1938 edition. Because when Janelle said something in the comments of the the video before that, I went and checked, and my book is from the 1930s, 1938, I believe. And I'm wondering if that's the only edition that was printed, because that was what she saw too. And I don't think that I saw any other dates mentioned when I was looking for this book. So that book would not go with me anywhere. But this one, where I can get easily, could. I managed to justify, because you've heard me complain 20 million different times, how I really dislike the covers on my Jane Austen books. So I went ahead and gave my old collection to my sister. I'm hoping she will read it. She's got developmental delays. She isn't naturally a reader, and because of where she's at developmentally, she tends to read at quite a bit of a younger level. So she tends to read Trixie Belden's. Nancy Drew is usually on the highest end that she tends to read, just because of where she is with her maturity. She's intelligent, she's just young, even though she's 2 years older than me. But I'm hoping, even though she won't necessarily get the social nuance, I'm hoping she will push herself to try to read these. And then we could have something to share together in that way. I know that she didn't necessarily I think she wasn't necessarily thrilled with the idea, but I'm hoping she'll give it a chance. Because she likes Little Women. She likes Anne of Green Gables. So I'm hoping that she'll just pick it up one day, just because I suggested Northanger Abbey for her to start with. Because I think that if she was to start something like Emma, the way my mom did, I'll never be able to get her to read a Jane Austen again. Just like I can't seem to beg my mom into reading Jane Austen again. So it's unfortunate. But my collection, Emma's currently out of it because I'm reading it. But look at this. This is what I had initially wanted. I don't know why I didn't see this when I was picking up my Jane Austen to begin with. It's got a ribbon that comes with it. Now, these ribbons, if I'm not careful, will fray. So I just have to be careful with them. But it's a beautiful hardcover book. This is Northanger Abbey. And even if, you could say, like, well, maybe it's not exactly the person that's a character in here that you're seeing on the cover. I don't care. It's silhouettes, and it looks of the period. Whereas the covers of the other one, it just didn't really make me think of Austonian. So here's Sense and Sensibility. Pride and Prejudice. Mansfield Park. I should like the one from Mansfield Park quite a bit. Persuasion. I guess the thing that I keep seeing on top of the head is like a feather, because I'm reading a lot of ancient Egyptian history right now. It looks like one of the crowns of, I'm not sure if it's Upper or Lower Egypt that has something like that. It just makes me think of that versus a feather. And then, this is Sanditon and Others' Tales. So this will include Lady Susan in here. Now, the one I'm currently reading, let me put my nice collection over here, is Emma. And I like to think of this as being Emma and Harriet on the front. I'm guessing Emma's supposed to be the one with the ginormous feather. Doesn't matter. It still gives the right feel. And I am not terribly far along because I've only been interspersing it between history reading, and I only started it again fairly recently. I meant to read it last year, just didn't happen. I usually tend to drag my feet on reading Emma because it's not necessarily my favorite of Austen's works, even though I love Mr. Knightley. Which, I love this part. It's Mr. Knightley talking to Mrs. Weston, and it cracked me up when I was reading it, more so than usual this time. Emma has been meaning to read more ever since she was 12 years old. I have seen a great many lists of her drawing up at various times of books she meant to read regularly through. And very good lists they were, very well chosen and very neatly arranged, sometimes alphabetically and sometimes by some other rule. The list she drew up when only 14. I remember thinking it did her judgment so much credit that I preserved it some time, and I dare say she may have made out a very good list now, but I have done with expecting any course of steady reading from Emma. And, well, I know it's meant particularly for Emma, who doesn't hardly read, because that's just not her preference. I partially also felt like Mr. Knightley was, like, attacking me, because I have my huge TBR, like, of all these books I intend to read all the way through, and I hardly read half the books in my TBR. It feels like they go from year to year. You know, I arrange them, not alphabetically, but, you know, I have all these plans, all these books I'm going to read. It never happens quite the way I intend to. So I feel like Mr. Knightley is picking on me a little bit, even if I'm not quite as bad as Emma is about my reading. Something that I picked up, I got this used, like most of my books are, that are physical, just because I'm cheap. Oh, this book was used for studying, and I don't mind. I actually kind of like, as long as they're not, like, too obnoxious within the book itself. I like having markings in my older books. Not so much the fictional ones, unless it's just, like, to so-and-so at the front, or a library card or something like that. I don't generally otherwise like it in my text. But for this, which is the Jane Austen Companion, a dictionary of Jane Austen's life and works by H. Abigail Bach, and it's a companion. Oh, sorry, it's a Jane Austen companion with a dictionary of Jane Austen's life and works, and it talks about just different. It has criticisms of her works. It talks about things like dancing balls and assemblies, dramatizations of novels, dress and fashion. It seems to be like a bunch of mini articles, maybe, of things that were during that time period. It gives you a family tree of Austen's own family. So it's not just focused on her works, it is very much focused on her life as well. This book, I believe, must have been used in a literature class, or maybe for something. Maybe someone was doing a thesis or term paper or something on Austen. Maybe they were an English major. I don't know. I was an English major. I don't know what sort of requirements they have when they're doing their senior thesis. I was nursing. Our life was very different, but I can see where someone went through and did little tick marks about things they thought were important. So, like, this person thought that the characterization Jane Austen was important, and then they have the criticisms, 1814 through 1983 marked off, Jane Austen and contemporary feminism, Jane Austen's novels, form and structure, Janeites and anti-Janeites, love and marriage, manners in society, persuasion, the canceled chapters, plot summaries, Jane Austen, and romanticism. And that's just the ones that this person ticked off. There's more than that. And then I can't quite figure out completely. I thought at first it was page numbers, but I'm not sure, because they have these random numbers listed along the side, and it might be page numbers, but it's 143, and then it's 1, then it's 79, 283, 374, and 399. So I guess it's page numbers, but I'm not completely sure. Oh, you know, it might be sections. I don't know. I haven't actually read through this yet. And every once in a while, I'll go through, and I think this is probably going to be mostly in the sections that this person ticked off. There's little sections where they underlined with their pencil. I mean, thankfully, this person wasn't like a heavy-handed highlighter, so this is still, pretty good in pretty good shape. I can't find one of the sections where she highlighted, he or she underlined. I saw it earlier, but I can't find it now. But, here we go. So, this person underlined in pencil, Austen in two key passages from Pride and Prejudice and Emma ascribes the same attribute to her heroines, liveliness of mind. So, if I wanted to, I'm sure I could erase that. I'm just going to leave it be. It doesn't hurt anything. But yeah, I look forward to going through this. It's not quite the same as reading one of the secret notebooks of Agatha Christie like I did today, because I just finished rereading Death Comes as the End, and it is the ancient Egyptian mystery that Agatha Christie wrote. It's her only true historical fiction that I'm aware of anyway, and it's in this collection, Murder International. My dad had to fix the binding for me, but I made a point of reading it this year because it fit nicely in my plan of reading historical fiction. I also wanted to show, I don't think I showed this, because I don't think I've shown any of my birthday acquisitions. My sister picked me up this really nice copy of The Secret Adversary. I love this cover. I mean, because isn't that just Tommy and Tuppence? She's constantly dragging him everywhere. I love them. Especially at the period of time when you're looking at them in their short stories, when they're early married, or in their first book. Oh, yeah, sorry, spoiler alert. And the other one I wanted to show you guys before I continue on with fictional stuff is the last Agatha Christie I wanted to pick up physically, because my shelf of Agatha Christie's has run out of room. But this is Come Tell Me How You Live. And this is her nonfiction book that she says it herself best in the beginning. Let's see. This book is an answer. It is the answer to a question that is asked me very often. So you dig in Syria, do you? Do tell me all about it. How do you live? In a tent, etc., etc. Most people probably do not want to know. It is just a small change of conversation. But there are, now and then, one or two people who are really interested. And I am one of those one or two people who is really interested. And I love that. She is so relatable. I love that beginning because, I mean, how often do we have someone... I noticed this in particular, mostly once I started getting sick before I had to stop working, people would ask, like, how are you doing? And they don't generally actually want to hear how you're doing. Not in the way that, not beyond, like, quick, oh, I'm okay, or, so-so, or whatever, but, they generally, they don't generally want to hear in great detail how you're doing. Otherwise, they start getting kind of trapped look, or I don't know why people ask if they don't want to know. Part of me would just, not maliciously, but annoyingly, I guess, every once in a while, just tell them exactly how I was doing that day, since they asked. But after a while, it just took too much energy, and I just would give them a quick answer like I'm vertical or something like that. But yes, I look forward to reading this. I think that I need to read this book while I'm reading my books on ancient Egypt, simply because I think that reading about how digs go, at least during this period of time, which would have been concurrent with some of these digs that, like where we would have found out about Akhenaten, or particularly Tutankhamun. reading about how digs were, what it was like to live on a dig during that time period, I think would be very interesting while reading the ancient books. But I don't want to put this one away yet because I'll have to reach it over you guys. So the other books I wanted to go over quickly. Remember what I've said about making all these lists and, them being really, some of them quite nicely and planned and organized in different ways each time? Well, I do intend on my TBR list that may or may not in any timely manner be hit up this year. I have been wanting to read in a version that's not just a kid's version, Oliver Twist and Great Expectations. And I don't know if you guys, how many of y'all read, there were these, I want to say they're called illustrated classics, and they would have all these different classics, Oliver Twist, Great Expectations, Christmas Carol, all these different classic books, and Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, a lot of these books that are classics, those illustrated classics, I believe it's called illustrated classics, that was how I got exposed to a lot of these classic books. And they were hardcover books, as I remember, not like really thin ones, just, decently sized. I think it made them just the books a little bit more comprehensible to kids. I don't know what it did exactly to change the verbiage or whatever, because I don't know how many of the books that I read then I've read as an adult, or because the time period was so far apart, maybe I just can't remember enough to make a good comparison. I already know that I really enjoyed Tale of Two Cities in high school. And I've read Christmas Carol fairly recently. But I've never read Oliver Twist as an adult, and I've never read Great Expectations as an adult. Technically, I've never read Tale of Two Cities as an adult because I was a teenager. But these are the four that I'm most interested in of his works. So when I saw that it was in an omnibus, I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to push myself to finally read Charles Dickens. I'll have this huge tome staring at me by my bed, making me feel guilty for not reading him. And I mean, maybe, because this book is fairly well made, I can probably take this to bed with, no, never mind, the text is small. Even though I read better with my glasses off, that's too small. Still, it could be a something that I will still, kind of scold me from my bedside and make me want to read it eventually, sooner rather than later. Speaking of, where is it? I know I brought Silmarillion over here, because I do intend, oh, there it is. I put Emma on top of it. I am going to start reading this again. This is something that's a little bit heavier reading, so I need to not read it immediately on the heels of something that's really intense for the history that I'm reading, but I do want to get back into this. So I also have this to sort of help me keep track. This is the Complete Tolkien Companion. My biggest concern is, if I remember correctly, Tolkien tends to reuse some names for his characters. Now, don't quote me on that because it has been a while since I've watched any Tolkien Tube or even read my my Silmarillion. So I just feel like this would help me though to keep track of different things throughout the book. If something like doesn't quite make sense, I can always look up and go like, oh yeah, all right, that makes sense, and then move forward. So I'm hoping that having this will help me move a little bit farther in the Silmarillion, because I do want to read the Silmarillion, because I have my other Tolkien books I want to read. I want to read his letters. I have just a whole bunch of Tolkien that I want to read, but I just need to get going on it. Stay. Don't fall. Alrighty. And then the final thing that, and what time is it? I need to keep track of time because I don't want to be up too late. Okay. The final one that I picked up that's a fiction is Father Brown Crime Stories. And this is supposed to include all his mystery books. I've read Father Brown before. I'm not sure if I've read all of his mysteries, But first things first, I like the size of the text. And then second of all, I think that Father Brown is going to be good for interspersing in between heavier books. So kind of like Your Guide to Not Getting Murdered in a Quaint English Village was just a nice, kind of relaxing of the brain. I can't pull further words of what I actually was trying to say, but yeah, kind of as a nice, just quick, easy read to sort of help my brain relax after reading more heavy things. This is what I want my Father Brown short stories to be, Not to read a whole bunch of them at once, just read them in between. Just to kind of relax. Good, it does start with the Blue Cross. I know that I haven't read all the collections because he has a different collections. There's the Innocence of Father Brown. Okay, yeah. I think I've read The Innocence of Father Brown. I think I might have read... Ooh, maybe I haven't read the Wisdom of Father Brown. I thought there was one other collection, but they only have 2 here. I thought there were several, but it says this is all of the Father Brown stories. So we'll see. If I'm missing any, I can always check it out later. But this is supposed to be all of them. So I look forward to reading this, or rereading this. What else? Shannara. I was going to pick up Shannara and start rereading again today, but first of all, I had just sped my way through, started and finished within, a few hours. Maybe not quite that. No, it was a few hours. Death Comes in as an End. So that was my nonfiction reading after having read a bunch of history. And I just didn't quite feel in the brain space to continue going down the road for something that was a little heavier, that was not nonfiction, because we are entering into a dangerous area here, and I just didn't feel in the brain space to really focus on that. I am currently, I think they're on the edges of the Dead Marshes. Mist Marsh, excuse me. Dead Marshes is Tolkien. Of the Mist Marsh. So I remember there being quite a lot happening in this section, at least if I remember correctly. So I didn't quite want to enter into this area tonight. Maybe later. I just really, if I was going to do fiction tonight, I wanted it to be purely relaxing, requiring no real focus on my part. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. I don't really have a whole lot of any substance to say about any of the fiction that I've read, simply because a lot of it was just meant to be a nice palate cleanser. There, that's what the term I was looking for, palate cleanser. You might be seeing more of other nonfiction books popping up. I know I need to finish Star Wars 1. I am wanting to continue on in my series of the Countess of Harley mysteries, because I have on pre-order the next 2. They'll be a while, so that will give my my pocketbook a chance to recover. But I haven't read A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder, and now that I can actually see the covers because I have them in physical form, I get a lot more enjoyment out of that. So the ones that I've already read, have been A Lady's Guide to Gossip and Murder, which was the first one was A Lady's Guide to Etiquette and Murder. And I never caught this when I saw it in Kindle form until it was pointed out to me by Janelle that, oh yeah, he's putting something in her drink. And this one, I think the key thing that they're the little crime that's going on that you don't quite pick up on unless you're paying attention is, I'm not sure if he's taking something from his pocket or putting something in his pocket. Maybe he's putting something in it. I think I can't quite tell what that is that he's supposed to be putting in. I can't remember because it's been a little while since I've read that book. Then for, whoopsie, this one here, this one's actually quite obvious. The guy carrying the poison bottle and the butler, because, I guess the butler did it, carrying the poison bottle and the 2 champagne glasses, which most likely carry said poison. And then this one, I don't see anything that's very obvious. There's no, weapons or anything on here that I can see. I could be missing something, but The Fiancé's Guide to First Wives and Murder. And then I think the next one is A Bride's Guide, and then after that is A Newlywed's Guide. And I'm interested in seeing how much farther she'll go with the series after The Newlywed's Guide. I'd love for her to continue the series because I've really enjoyed the first 2 books. The only reason why I've been holding off on the next 2 is because I've almost been saving them for a day I haven't felt well. Because even though I've had those days, I just keep forgetting to read them when I don't feel well. But these books are very nice, just relaxing books. They're books that I can work my way through very quickly. They kind of give me that comforting Agatha Christie type feeling. So I do need to pick up the 3rd book pretty soon. I was going to hold off until I hit, I think this is Victorian time. Because this would count as historical fiction because it wasn't written during the period. I think this is Victorian. Does it say? It doesn't say right in front. I thought that this is Victorian. Yeah, Victorian Mysteries. So that wouldn't be until the 4th quarter. And I'm not sure I want to wait that long to read those during the 4th quarter. Maybe by the 4th quarter I will be reading the Newlywed's Guide. And that one will be saved for then. But that'll give me 3 books to read prior. So yeah, is that it for fiction? I believe so, because almost everything else, I'm just looking at my shelf behind you guys, just make sure I'm not forgetting anything. But I just simply haven't been reading a lot of nonfiction. That's incorrect. I simply haven't been reading a lot of fiction due to all the nonfiction I've been reading. This year, my goal has been kind of in the tongue, and I'm not editing that out. This year, my goal has been to at least have a half and half fiction, nonfiction on my graph, on Storygraph, because, I don't know, I just kind of like that idea of not being quite so heavy on the fiction end of things. I don't know, it's just been something that's been my goal for the past couple of years. I just have, whenever I hit the Agatha Christie, well, if I read Agatha Christie in general, I tend to go on a spree and I can knock out her books really quickly. So if I'm ever at a point where I'm kind of behind in my reading goals, I tend to just pick up Agatha Christie and I can just breeze through those and make up for lost time. But I want to try to save most of my Agatha Christie's for when I get a little closer to when the Agatha Christie, the Christie's Missing readathon happens again, which was December this past year. So it happens during the time period that she was missing. So I'd like to save reading too much of her stuff till then. But when I do hit that period of time, I tend to read a lot of her, and that will make my fiction stats jump up, which usually is what is going to knock me out of having my fiction and nonfiction numbers be even. So we'll see. I'd like to have them stay even until through the end of the year. But if I read too much Agatha Christie, that won't happen. So yeah, that's it for me. Hope that you have a very blessed night. Sorry that there's not a whole lot in the way of discussion of plot or anything like that, but I've just simply haven't been doing a whole lot of fiction reading. I hope to be doing a little bit more with picking up some short stories here and there. Now, that is something I might do for Agatha Christie, is I might read some of her short stories when I'm done with the Father Brown ones, just as being like interspersed in between the the nonfiction readings. So yeah, that's it for me. I will have this saving while I am sleeping, so then I will put it up probably tomorrow. And actually, not tomorrow because it's after midnight, later today when I have a chance. So I will see y'all whenever. God bless. Bye.